Let's look at an example where we have three sets involved in our set diagram. So here a survey revealed the following results about the news sources that a sample of 130 people used. We're going to use this data to create a Venn diagram. So 20 people said they use TV only, 29 people said they use internet only, 15 people said they said podcast only, 12 people said TV and internet only, 18 people said TV and podcast only, 22 people said internet and podcast only, 8 people said all three sources, and 6 people said none of these three sources. So you'll notice that there are three top qualities or avenues of news source that people are using in this data. We have TV, we have internet, and then we have podcasts. So those are going to be our three sets. Okay, so I'll start by drawing a rectangle to represent the universe of all the people that were interviewed. And then I'll draw the three sets. Now, one recommendation for drawing three sets or three circles that have overlap is to draw two up high overlapping, like you would draw an overlap between two sets, and then one down below. I'm going to label one of them TV, one of them the internet, and the third one podcast, if I can spell podcast. So these are our three sets that we have in this Venn diagram that we're going to take this data and put in. All right, so let's start with the first several pieces of information. The first one says 20 people said they use TV only. All right, so these people are talking about only using TV. They're not using the internet. They're not using the podcast. So what we want to do is put 20 into only the region where you would have TV only. That would be the region for the TV circle that has no overlap. If it has no overlap, because it says only, you would be just in the region for TV that is not overlapping with internet or podcast. And we don't need to tease this number apart like we did in some of the previous examples because it says this word only. That only word is a clue that you have to be outside of the overlap, only. The next piece of information says 29 people said they use the internet only. So now we can use the same strategy to put the 29 located in the internet only region. 15 people said they use podcast only. So 15 people in the podcast only region. So we've kind of got those outer parts of the circles put together. So we've taken care of the first three pieces of information. Then 12 people said TV and internet only. Now this time we're only looking for the overlap where we have TV and internet. It says only there, so not the overlap with podcast. So TV and internet only would be where we have TV overlapping with the internet, but we do not want to include the overlap with podcast. So I'm excluding that region that I put an X in. All right, so to put the information in right there, that's 12 people. And we can put it in directly because it does say that this is only, those 12 people are only using TV and the internet. They are not using podcast. Moving on, 18 people said TV and podcast only. So again, look for where TV and podcast overlap, but only where TV and podcast overlap, not where the internet is. So I would put the 18 here where TV and podcast overlap, but exclude the internet. Then 22 people said the internet and podcast only. So 22 people, internet and podcast, where we have overlap between those two sets, but not the TV overlap. And finally, it said 8 people use all three sources. So that would be right in the very center. And one last piece of information, it says 6 people use none of these three sources. If you use none, that means you're outside of all three circles. That would be inside the rectangle, but outside of the circles. So now we've placed all the numbers, all the information that we were given about the data that was collected into the diagram. And if you look carefully at the diagram, every single region actually has a number associated with it. So we have completely filled in the Venn diagram with the information. Well, let's answer some questions now. Question 1. I'm going to highlight it here. Question 1. How many people use TV to get their news? All right. So TV, it doesn't say TV only. It doesn't say TV and internet or TV and podcast. It just says TV. That means we want to look at the entire TV circle. So the entire circle, which I will highlight here, I would want to include every single person in that circle. So that would be 20 people plus 12 plus 8 plus 18. So that would be 58. People get their news from the TV. Let's look at question 2. How many people use the internet or TV? Actually, I said it backwards. Use TV or the internet. Well, let's highlight that one. Again, just to make it easier to see. How many people use the TV or internet? We're going to look at both the TV circle and the internet circle. And means all of both. So we would look at all of the TV circle and include all of the internet circle. So that would be one, the other, or both. Or, in mathematics, is an inclusive operation. So we would say 20 plus 12 plus 18 plus 8 plus 29 plus 22. Make sure you have all of the 6 numbers involved there. And add them up, and that would be 109 people. Question 3. How many people use the internet or TV, which is basically what we talked about in problem number 2, but now I'm saying, but not podcasts. So I want to exclude podcast values. So if I want to exclude the podcast value, I want to exclude the overlap these things had with podcasts. So I come up to where the podcast circle is and eliminate the values where we have the podcast. So now if I look at what's left, I have just the 20, the 12, and the 29. So that's a total of 61 people. So answering the questions isn't too bad once you have the data organized in that Venn diagram. That's the power of the Venn diagram, is to allow you to organize things to more easily then interpret the data. One last thing I wanted to mention, which I didn't write down here, is that we can go ahead and look at the total number of people who were surveyed here, which wasn't really asked about, but I can put in. I just erased some of my markings to make it easier to see. So I had, I think, 18 people in that region. So if I were to total up everyone that is in the Venn diagram, I would get the total number of people surveyed. So adding up all of the numbers, 20, 12, 29, 8, 12, 18, 22, 15, and 6, I would get 130 people who were interviewed altogether. So just a reminder that you would find the total number of people, which we have here, as a good check to make sure you've put things in correctly.